Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this morning? Happy and blessed Wednesday, and welcome back to the Good Morning Asgard podcast, episode 562, I believe, of the podcast, where today we will be talking about the upcoming film, F1. I have my tickets to go see that movie tonight. I'm pretty excited for it. The same creators and also the same technical people, like cinematographers and such, behind the amazing sequel to Top Gun Maverick, which came out a few years ago. The same people behind that are making this film, F1, so very, very excited. Heard it's very, very good and very entertaining, so it's about time that we've gotten some of that out of the box, some of that at the movie theaters these days, but it does influence the potential for the box office because, let's just say, box office tracking for F1 is all over the place. There are some projections that are really, really low, especially in the domestic marketplace as far as their opening weekend, and there are some that seem to be a bit more bullish on the prospects, that maybe it'll do a little bit better, maybe that word of mouth will be able to help. Now, we all know, of course, opening weekend is not everything. It is very important because it does set the standard. It does also set the number of people that can give you that positive word of mouth that is so incredibly important for any film, especially a film like F1, which cost between $200 and $300 million. The original report was $200 million, but there were some reports out there that cost upwards to $300 million, which means, this film's got to make about $600 to $900 million worldwide just to break even. Based on the opening weekend numbers, at least the early projections, that does not seem like it will happen. However, we don't know yet. We don't know what the internationals are going to look like. That's going to be very, very key, since F1 racing is much bigger in Europe, as many people in the comments section and in my chat always like to remind me of. So we could see bigger numbers there, but we also could see bigger numbers domestically as well, because people want to be entertained. People want to be able to go and escape into a movie. And because this film is also going to have some of those premium format screens getting IMAX and other premium format releases, hey, maybe it could happen. But before going any further, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button over on Odyssey, smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure to retweet, repost this over on X, so we are live on all of those platforms today. Hopefully, the X stream is coming through swimmingly. Also, if you comment over there, the chat should come through theoretically over on my end, so that I can also highlight those comments as well. So let me just double check and see if that is the case. It's not looking like that is the case because of course it's not. Let me see if maybe I have to sign in again using this app. It drives me crazy sometimes. It drives me so crazy sometimes to try to get this thing to work. Let's see here. Of course, that's not the correct password. All right. Well, anyway, I am streaming over on... I am streaming over there. Maybe if I restart it, maybe that'll work. There it is. Okay. There we go. So let me put a message there saying hello. Okay. So that should be working now over on X. Let's say hello to the people, though, in the chat. We did have someone here early this morning. We had Laura, the Modern Major General, Shorty Short, saying, the only good thing about always waking up at 5 a.m. is I get to hear Odin in the morning. Welcome back to Odin in the Morning, Shorty Short. Thank you, as always, for being here. Thank you for being a mod here on the channel as well. We got also the Morak saying, Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday to you, Morak. Welcome back. Let's see. We also have JS Pena hanging out in the chat. What's going on, JS Pena? Welcome back. We got Snorterpoopus Cuber. Hello, humans and other quitters. And then goes on to say, hello to you. Welcome back, Snorterpoopus. Glad to have you here. And at 10:02, we have the Heretical Nerd. Hail Odin. Hail to you, Heretical Nerd. Thanks for being here. Just to show you that it does work, there was me saying hello over on X/Twitter, as I always like to call it. Let's go ahead then and jump straight into our first story and our first talking point. I don't really know how to do it. I'm really tired still. These morning streams, I tell you, they're crazy. Actually, no, before going into the first stream, let's just actually get a programming note out there first. So if you are used to coming here to watch the streams on Monday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, or during the summertime, 10 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays, there will not be a Monday or Wednesday show next week. So the family, we are going traveling. We are going to St. Louis to visit some family and then on to Tulsa starting on a Friday of this week. So I won't be on FNT this week. I won't be on the Salty Saturday stream this week. I also won't be on my own stream Monday of next week or the morning show Wednesday of next week. And then if everything works out, should be back in time for FNT on Friday of the following week. So that is currently the goal and the schedule. So just wanted to put that out there at the very beginning. I will also post that on Discord, on the post section on YouTube, and on social media as well, just to make sure everyone is aware, since I know some people either don't check social media or don't check it very often. So just to make sure that I get as much notice on those things as I possibly can get. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into our first topic, which is F1. Is this film going to make any money? Is this film going to have a good opening weekend? Is this film going to do much at all at the box office? Well, we are still waiting on the official projections for this weekend. Typically, they come out sometime today or tomorrow from Box Office Pro, Box Office Theory, and then Box Office Reports numbers come out on Thursday night, Friday morning. And so that's why I do my box office preview Friday morning. We'll still have a box office preview. I should be able to get that recorded before we hit the road on Friday. And I'll try to do a box office breakdown video. At the very least, I will be getting a box office article out on Sunday. So that way you can go to geeksneighbors.com to access that. That'll be either on Sunday or Monday that article will go live. So if there is no box office breakdown video, at the very least, I will be able to get that. So anyway, just to kind of give y'all a heads up there as well. So right now we have some long-range tracking from Box Office Pro. So this was, again, looking ahead to this weekend with F1. It does have the early showings tonight, and then it obviously has the early showings also tomorrow, the day that it officially premieres. So F1, according to Box Office Pro at the very least, has a domestic opening weekend range of between $48 and $60 million. Now that seems to me to be quite low. For a film that cost upwards of $300 million to make, that is not the kind of opening weekend you want to see, even if that is just the domestic. Some would say, well, what about those internationals? That's true. You could end up having a $100 million domestic, or rather international opening, and $150-ish million, therefore, in your total worldwide global opening. All of that could still potentially happen. The issue is that it's very hard to track when it comes to international numbers, and we also just don't have much reporting on those initial numbers as of yet. But that is what Box Office Pro is seeing. Now, if we go over to the box office tracking for Box Office Theory, right, they have their long-range forecasting, which means that they take into account a lot of different factors, not just your traditional tracking, but also some other factors there as well, online presence and views and things like that. Again, I don't know the official formula that they use, but they do something a little bit differently than Box Office Pro / the mainstream media. Box Office Pro itself also does something different than the mainstream media as well. So right now, what we have is, right, these early tracking results for what they think is going to happen over Box Office Pro, which again, $48 to $60 million. Whereas for Box Office Theory, again, our friend over there, Sean Robbins, I do love his site and his service. He's put some things behind the paywall, unfortunately, but he still has a lot of things out there for free, which I do very much appreciate. So for him, he has a somewhat similar prospect here, but he does give a little bit more, I would say, optimism towards the possibility that this movie might actually be bigger than what is being projected. So according to his projections, and this was, again, updated the 19th, so this is now about 6 days, almost a week old, because again, we're on the brink of him releasing his box office projections for the weekend. And so his range is between 59 and 75 million. So whereas the long range forecast for Box Office Pro has 60 million as the high end, the low end of Box Office Theories is actually around $60 million. And so what do I think? I tend to agree with Box Office Theory. I tend to think that his tracking is much better. His model is much more accurate, or at the very least can accommodate for the various changes that happen in the midst of a movie opening. this movie obviously was able to be viewed by a lot of different reviewers out there, and all of the early reviews are very, very positive towards this movie. That positive word of mouth can be all the difference between a very strong opening and a very strong second weekend, etc., etc. Again, not that critics drive box office, as we all know, especially Rotten Tomatoes has lost its it factor after quite some time, right? It's been several years since that has happened, ever since they started to tinker and tweak with their system to protect studios, especially studios named Disney. It is something that I do think is not nearly as reliable and as influential as it used to have been. But F1 projected to make $59 to $75 million, according to Box Office Theory, with a total domestic range of $165 to $250 million. So just kind of extrapolating the numbers that we have in front of us, this movie, $300 million, is what the overall budget could potentially be, right? Now, since we are going a little bit heavier here on the math, it is important for us to put into context exactly what our conversation is going to entail. So here we go.
Time to see a real mathematician at work.
That's right, everybody. It's time for some math and to see a real mathematician at work. So again, extrapolating out that range of $165 to $250 million in total. That means roughly $200-ish million is what's projected right now by Box Office Theory for your total domestic. If we see for this movie, because of that F1 audience, because of possibly doing better internationally, most films, though, even with that higher international potential, don't typically do that much more, right? So what I mean is to say, if it makes $200 million domestically, we probably could expect it to make between, $400 to $600 million on a high-end portion of projected range there, which would be enough to put this film to $600 to $800 million globally, if it were to actually get to that point. Now, I do think that is being a little bit generous on those international numbers because, again, I am not an F1 person. I do not understand that the audience there. And so could that be a difference maker or not? It's very hard to tell at this point in time. What we can do, though, is we can start to, again, doing this thing live because we love doing things live here on OMB Reviews. We go over to thenumbers.com because there is actually one film that we can look to maybe get a better idea of whether or not that audience, right, this international audience people keep talking about, is a real thing or not. And that is a film called Ford v. Ferrari. Right? Because obviously, we talk about Ford v. Ferrari, we're talking about not NASCAR, but rather a level of racing that is much more popular in Europe and abroad. Here is the issue, though, with that argument, right? A lot of people have been making that, saying, oh man, the F1 fans, it's very, very popular, just let me tell you. Well, I'm pretty sure, and again, apologies if this is going to be a bit esoteric, or also if my pronunciation of these names is wrong as well, but in the situation where you're talking about the 1966 Le Mans World Championship, you would think that that's a pretty big deal for European audiences, especially fans of that type of racing that's going on over there. And yet, even with that, it only made $106 million in the entire international market. Going to the individual countries and their releases, Russia was actually the largest share. Russia, of all places, where it made $11 million. South Korea was then second at $10.2 million, then France at $9.7, Japan at $8.5, Australia at $8.3, and then the UK. So the UK wasn't even in the top three of the largest countries, where it only made $8 million. And then you look to those numbers and say, okay, you have France and you have the United Kingdom as far as European audiences are concerned. That's not a very high mark. Even Italy is not anywhere close. You would think Ferrari especially would be a big thing. Now, you could also argue, okay, this was an American movie, and so because of that and because of its focal point on Ford as the American company going up against the Europeans, maybe they didn't want to go watch it for that very reason. That could be the case. But what's going on in this upcoming film F1? Is it not about an American driver? I don't think Brad Pitt is playing a non-American. In fact, let's just go ahead and see what is the general consensus or what is the general synopsis of the film F1 to maybe get a better idea. Again, it's it's hard sometimes to pinpoint these things in trailers alone. It says here, Sonny Hayes, a Formula One driver who raced in the 1990s, has a horrible crash, forcing him to retire from Formula One and start racing in other disciplines. A Formula One team owner and friend Ruben contacts Hayes and asks him to come out of retirement to mentor rookie prodigy Joshua Noah Pierce from the Apex Grand Prix team. So, again, it sounds to me like an American. So, going back to Ford v. Ferrari, if the topic itself of racing, of non-NASCAR racing, if that itself alone were enough to drive out your audience, well, why didn't they show up for Ford v. Ferrari? If this is also, and again, if the argument there would be, oh, well, because of the American focus, okay, well, then in this situation too, again, I don't know exactly who Sonny Hayes is. So again, because I do not follow Formula One, let's go ahead and pull this up real quick. So let's see, who is Sonny Hayes? Let's pull up the Wikipedia of all things. So American sports drama directed by Joseph Kosinski, obviously very, very talented there, based on the Formula One World Championship. It's the highest worldwide racing open-wheel single-seater formula racing by the FIA. Has been one of the world's premier motorsports. Created collaboration with the FIA's governing body. The film stars Brad Pitt alongside Damson Idris, Kerry Condon, Tobias Menzies, and Javier Bardem. Let's see, Sonny Hayes, racer from Formula One. So let us see if maybe they give us more information here. Some of y'all might even be like, oh, I know who this person is, and I can give you all the deets. But let's see, is there even a page for Sonny Hayes? Interestingly enough, there is not even a Wikipedia page for that. So again, as a complete outsider here, this does not really seem to be that big of a personality. Again, not even to have a Wikipedia page of all things. There are some Formula One teams that are appearing in this movie. So, hey, there is that. Here we go. So, Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes, a New York City American cab driver, professional gambler, and nomadic racer for hire who was a Formula One driver in his youth and would later return to F1 later on. A hotshot rookie who drives for APXGP becomes Sonny's teammate. It goes on and on and on. So again, if the argument being made is European audience, this seems to have the same issues that Ford v. Ferrari would have had. Now, the only other argument that really you could make would be, well, Ford v. Ferrari was much more of an artistic movie. It was not meant to be this action-type film, which is how this movie currently is being promoted, and they're two very different films. That is absolutely true. One could absolutely make that point. The point that I'm trying to make is that just the general argument of, well, just wait for that F1 audience to show up. Unless someone can tell me a compelling argument as to why Ford v. Ferrari would not have also had that same audience to pull from, it seems to me that right now the projections aren't looking all that good. Now, again, a lot of things can change. As I just mentioned before, I think domestically, I think the film will be bigger. I think the film will probably be closer to the box office theory numbers and maybe even towards the high end of those numbers, especially if the word of mouth with the general audiences is really, really good, is really, really hyped up. My other point, though, is I do think that there is enough reason for them to possibly be a little concerned of the prospects of this movie and whether or not this film will do well or not. And I just realized that Heimdall is off, so let me make sure that I put Heimdall on, so that way Heimdall is keeping track of y'all's cookies and stuff like that. All right, while we wait for Heimdall to boot up, let's head back into the chat to see what y'all have to say about this. So Thanatos Felicitas saying, hello, Odin. Hello, Thanatos. Welcome at 10:08 a.m. Kigan Rumsky hanging out over on the Green Machine. What's going on, Kigan Rumsky? Is Jason Statham in Megan 2? I see what you did there. G-Monkey76, what is going on? Welcome back. And at 10:17, Michael Brigette says, Sonny Hayes and Josiah Pierce are completely fictional characters, but there are actual F1 racers that are there. I see. That makes a lot more sense as to why there was not a Wikipedia page for the person. The way that it was explaining it, though, made it sound like... made it sound like it. Who drove in the 1990s. I guess the premise itself makes it sound like it's based on a true story, but glad that that is not the case. Again, that's why we do things live. It helps keep me honest with these things. Appreciate you. All right. last of the comments there. So we'll go ahead and just move on ahead. So again, really the general idea though for this one, and people might be looking at this in the future, might be leave a comment in the future. Just what do you think it's going to do? Do you think it's going to do the box office theory numbers or the box office pro numbers, or do you think it'll do something a little bit different? Again, if it was me, I think, again, usually I go towards the theory. I have a bias more towards there because I feel like that I keep going back to it, but they were one of the few that really, nailed the fact that Barbie was going to make a lot more than what the industry was saying. And I think that they're usually pretty good at picking up those things and kind of getting the feelers out there for what a film is likely going to be doing. So I think I think there's a lot of high hopes for this movie to do that. And again, if it has that good audience run, even if the opening weekend is not the biggest in the world, yeah, you know what? You could still end up seeing the film do pretty well, right? You could still end up seeing the film do much better than what anyone could have expected it to. But I do think the standard that has to be set for it is going to have to, of course, go back to... and I know people are probably tired of the comparison, but you're going to have to keep going back to the Top Gun Maverick, right? You're going to have to keep on going back to that movie because ultimately, back in 2022, that was one of the biggest films of the year. It domestically, people forget this. That film domestically made over $700 million and made $1.4 billion. I had forgotten that Top Gun Maverick was a $1 billion film, but $1.4 billion with over $700 million in the international. So maybe that's how they do it. Maybe it's because it's just a good action film and that appeals to various demographics across the world, and that's the reason why people go to see it. Right? I don't think that we could say that 1.4 billion people who went to go see Top Gun Maverick were all huge fans of the original and just really wanted to see that story continued. No. It's because they heard, oh man, this thing you have to see in theaters. This thing is so amazing to see. It sounds like that's what they have done also in the upcoming F1 movie. And if I know anything about the team behind it, they likely were inside actual F1 racers and actually were getting some real shots. And so it's going to actually feel like you are there. That I think could be a huge impact. And that's why I think that people need to stop mentioning the whole, F1 is really, really big in other markets, because I don't think there's a really good argument for that. Again, I think Ford v Ferrari is a great example. It's also that reminder that just because there's an audience for something does not mean that audience is going to show up. This was one of the reasons why, when it came to the Super Mario Brothers movie, right? One of the reasons why I said, I don't know if it's going to hit $1 billion is because people were assuming, oh, well, Mario's a huge brand and everyone, all these people play the games. It's like, just because you play the game doesn't mean you're going to watch the movie. There's several video game adaptations that did not get anywhere close to the user base that exists for that. Even the successful ones, right? Even Mario, right? If you look at what Mario did in Japan, it did not do nearly as well as what people thought it was going to do in that market. And that's because there's biases that exist. If it's an American-made, funded movie, that impacts whether people want to go see it or not. There's a lot of other factors that can influence that as well. So, again, I do think that if the film is going to do well, and I do think it will, if the film is going to do well, F1, I think it's going to be because it's a fun action movie and not for any other reason. What say you? We got Fun with Collecting. What's going on at 10:20 a.m. saying, good morning, Odin. I'm in Eastern New York for summer. Opening IMAX 7 p.m. is nearly sold out here. Superman and F4, not so much. Yeah, well, keep in mind, we are literally 2 days away from this movie coming out. And actually, there are showings tonight even. And we're still a little ways away from Superman and Fantastic Four. That is the issue that people oftentimes don't think about. Do not assume, oh man, look at how many empty seats there are. And it drives me crazy that at least currently, people are still doing this because it's a really bad metric, okay? If you're going to go ahead and say, look, my local theater has so many open seats for this movie, it must be a failure. That's a terrible mindset, and that's a terrible analysis. And here's the reason why. A lot of people still today do not buy their tickets until either one, it's the last minute, so they buy it before they leave their house, or two, they walk up. The walk-up traffic. And that's something that tracking typically cannot really pinpoint all that well. So that's why it takes people like Sean Robbins to say, okay, how many views on a YouTube video or how many impressions equates to how many people. Okay, we know that it's not one-to-one. We know that it's not, right, oh, you get a million views on a video, a million people are going to go see your film, right? That's not how that works at all. But clearly there is some type of combination. And so I'm sure that Sean Robbins has maybe done some mathematical equations, number crunching on that, well and far beyond my capacity as a person, right, who tries to stay as sane as he can when dealing with math and numbers. So you have this dynamic going for it, right, where this idea of projecting things off of a single theater in your hometown is just, again, not a good metric. Because there's plenty of movies that made billions of dollars that people kept telling me, oh, well, look, my theater's empty. This film is failing. It's like, well, look, it could be because your movie, the movie itself, is not good in your market. It could be that your specific market, meaning your area, is not very fond of a particular film. Well, just because your market isn't doesn't mean that the market next door isn't a higher one. It doesn't mean that there are not other cities or other states where it's going to appeal to a larger audience there or not. So if you're going to use that argument, and again, I'm not calling you out, Fun with Collecting, this is more of the general principle, you have to do it as a comparison. So what you have to then do, and this is something where most people don't want to do this, even I myself don't really want to do this, is you have to say, all right, 3 weeks out from a release, what's it looking like? Okay, I have that snapshot. Now, when another movie's about to come out, I go to the 3 weeks before that movie comes out and say, all right, how many tickets were sold at that same time snapshot? And then I compare them and say, this one had 2 more tickets than this one. That would give you an idea. That is actually a better metric to use because then you actually have a comparison to say, oh, at this same point of release, here's how many tickets were sold. At this point in release, here's how many tickets were sold for that movie instead. So people are doing that a lot for Superman and Fantastic Four, and it's like, look, just because your theater, or even many of your theaters, aren't selling well right now, does not mean it's going to flop. That's just not how the numbers work. That's not how the box office works. And that's not how people work either. Again, your hardcore fans, those are the ones buying those tickets. So all that could mean is that, hey, there's no hardcore fans in your area for that theater. But there might be another theater nearby where they live near. There might be a theater in another city where they live near. There's a lot of different reasons and a lot of different things. That's why when people immediately go to the conspiracies with Disney movies, especially of, well, my local theater had no tickets sold and so therefore it must mean that it's flopping or that they're buying tickets. It's like, whoa, hold on. Or maybe it's just not doing well in your theater, but it is doing really well in other theaters. We don't have to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole to be able to make points. But anyway, Fun with Collecting. Thanks for being here, man. Let's see. The Morak tagging to say, really hoping F1 is good. I haven't looked forward to seeing a movie in quite a while. Same here, man. Same here. So I'm hoping it lives up to the hype that's been built for it. Because of the team behind it, though, I have to say, there's very little reason for me to not think that the movie will be good. All right. And I think I've gone through this before, but just in case I haven't or I haven't done it in a while, just to give you a reason as to what gives me hope. Because obviously early reviews are good from people we trust. So like when a John Flickinger comes out there and says, man, this thing is really fun, is really good. Hey, I'm going to listen to that. When Jeremy Johns comes out with a video and he talks about a movie, right? I tend to think, okay, I trust these people on most things, not everything, but on most things. Here's the bigger reason to, I think, trust that F1 will at the very least be a fun movie, okay? So here is the filmography of the director, Joseph Kosinski. So his first ever movie, all right? His first ever movie, theatrically, was Tron Legacy. Now, I'm not a big Tron person myself, and I'm going to be honest, this is not a movie that I would want to go back to because to me there was too much CGI, too many visual effects, and they didn't really all look all that great, especially the de-aging that they did on one of their main characters. It's like, yeah, Jeff Bridges is not looking too good. All right, not looking too good in this movie, right? The younger version of him. But for a first movie, hey, that's actually pretty good. He then followed up 3 years later, which in my opinion is a very underrated Tom Cruise film called Oblivion. The visual effects in this movie are spectacular. The fact that they still look so good even after 12 years, and much better than a lot of the crap we get, especially from like the Marvels and even the trailers for Superman. I know people are excited for it, but the CG just does not look that great, especially when you compare it up to the CG of things like Oblivion. Like the ships in that movie are just beautiful. And the score especially, right? It's M83 was, I think, the team behind that one. And the main theme to it is just addicting. It's so well done. Anyway, I love this movie. This is what made me a fan of Joseph Kosinski, because I was like, wait, he did Oblivion? I'm on board. So then 2017, Only the Brave comes out about the Granite Mountain hotshots. That's a phenomenal movie too. Not having to use a lot of CGI except for the fire. It's much more of a human story. That film will break your heart, by the way. So if you're looking for a good cry, Only the Brave, good film to watch if you want a good cry. It shows you the heroism that exists in our world, and the men that especially sacrifice themselves to save people from this. Again, it's based on a true story, so it's not really spoiling much of anything. But the fact that they were willing to do that, oh man, it's again. There's also great follow-up, right? So Oblivion is probably one of my favorites that he's done. Only the Brave is also fantastic. A great movie I would highly recommend. Then he did Top Gun Maverick, and it's like, whoa, is this his peak? Because Top Gun Maverick was so much fun. He then followed it up with one that was not nearly as well received, Spiderhead. Now, the premise of Spiderhead is actually really, really good. This was a Netflix movie. So part of me wonders, okay, did the involvement of Netflix potentially influence this movie and make it not as good? Maybe. Right? But again, I actually still liked it nonetheless. I thought that the performances were still really good. The concepts are really good too. And again, he didn't write this one, but he was the director of it. He then went on and was a part of the writing team for Twisters to direct that one. So I look at his filmography and I think, okay, this is a really, really good list of movies. There are I would say there's no flops among them as far as actual content. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Tron Legacy, but for a first-time directing a film, especially a feature film, I think he did a great job with it. There's a lot of great things to praise in that film. Then he follows it up with Oblivion, which to me is just like a gorgeous movie. And then he does Only the Brave, Top Gun Maverick. So he has 3 films in a row that I would say are like top tier. If I had to do a tier list, they're like S-tier movies for me at least. That's where I would put them as far as their entertainment value and the craft and skill behind the films also, like the objective-subjective combination there. Spiderhead, I enjoyed it subjectively, but objectively there are a lot of problems with it. But still, I would say probably a bit of a miss. Every director has one. I would say this is probably more on the vein and line of Tron Legacy for me, at least, though the concept's a bit more interesting for Spiderhead, in my opinion. And now we have F1. So there is very little reason for me to suspect that this will not be good. Because Spiderhead was also one of the smaller films, meaning it was one that was more contained. It didn't deal with a broad spanning universe and action set pieces and things like that. Anytime he's done that, from Oblivion to even part of Only the Brave and Top Gun Maverick, he has knocked it out of the park every single time. And so that's the reason why. So we have him, of course. Some people point to the fact that you do have Jerry Bruckheimer producing the film. So again, take that for what it is. I don't think that's going to make too much of a difference. Huge thing. Claudio Miranda coming back to be the cinematographer. He has done beautiful work with these movies. He has been his cinematographer for basically every single one. Hans Zimmer has done the score. It is an Apple Studios produced movie, but it's also produced by others as well. It's distributed by both Warner Brothers and Apple. So that actually gives it a leg up to me. Because if this was just an Apple movie, who knows? And especially for box office, Apple films haven't always done the best. But the fact that this is also being put out and distributed by Warner Brothers, okay, that is, I think, reason to have hope that this film might actually do a lot better than what the early indications are at the very least. So anyway, a little background there on Joseph Kosinski. Have you seen those movies? What are your thoughts on those films? Jay Price tagging to say, hey, what's going on, Jay Price? Thank you very much for being here. Remember, if you have a comment or question that you want read aloud, just put at Odin at the very beginning of the comment. At Odin lets me know that you're trying to get my attention, but if I'm collecting, I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is also an Apple movie. Again, Apple and Warner Brothers. Again, a lot of other production companies behind it. So I know it's going to be easily available within the next couple of months, but I'm still going to opening day to IMAX seat D11. Okay, you got your own seat there. Yeah, but I will say, I think that that's what the benefit will be. Yes, it's going to have the Apple tag on it, but it's also Warner Brothers. And so that's going to be the key. How many people can they drive out opening weekend to see it? And with that in mind, how well are they going to be able to market this movie for people to know and realize, okay, this is not just going to be a film that's on Apple TV within 5 days, right? And I'll actually look and see right here exactly where it's at. First off, actually, Hot Wheels announced the release of a 1/64 scale die-cast model. That's pretty cool. All right. And this is some more, okay, this is more information here. So let's actually go keep going on this one. Let's keep going on this one. So thank you for that comment there, because going back over to the Wikipedia article we have here, it mentions a bit more about it. So in June of 2022, Apple acquired distribution rights in a package deal worth 130 to 140 million before above the line compensation. Refers to the list of individuals who guided and influenced the creative direction, given narrative in the film and related expenditures. These roles include, but are not limited to, the screenwriter, producer, directors, principal cast. So deal before above the line compensation. So just to get a bit of better idea here about the production of it, on December 3rd, 2021, a bidding war commenced for an untitled film with them involved. In June of 2022, Pitt was paid $30 million for his involvement. Woo! That's a huge payday for him. $30 million for Brad Pitt to do this movie. And they say there's no stars left in Hollywood. He's definitely, I would say Brad Pitt's still a movie star. Now, not in the same way that we typically mean, like Hollywood movie stars used to be, okay, they're going to bring in all the people. Okay, that doesn't really happen anymore, right? But clearly, people still like him enough to where people think he's worth $30 million for one movie, of all things. So it sounds like they, in their acquisition of the rights to distribute the film, and as they were also a producer, it sounds like they were also on the line for some of those production costs too. So again, they spent 130 to 40 to get the rights to distribute it, and then they had additional costs for the actual production. Oh boy. So I don't know how, again, Apple Plus to me is just bleeding money, because they spend all this money on these movies, and then the movies themselves don't make a whole lot back for them usually. And I know that they can lose it because they have so many other revenue streams where they get in tons of cash. But the question really is, okay, how much were those above the line compensations that they owed? Who knows? All right, that was June of 2022. In June of 2024, Warner Brothers Pictures acquired the theatrical, home entertainment, and digital purchase distribution rights from Apple, with the film currently scheduled to be released in the IMAX format internationally on June 25th and domestically June 27th. Apple retains SVOD rights. It will become available on Apple TV Plus at a later date. The movie has also had an early IMAX screening on June 23rd. So, this is interesting. So, Warner Brothers actually bought rights from Apple. Apple was initially going to be the distributor on this movie. I think that's a good move by Apple. Probably helped them make some of that money back, because I imagine Warner Brothers had to pay a bit of money, right, for those distribution rights there. However, they do still retain SVOD. Now, I know video on demand is VOD. SVOD, I actually don't know what that actually means. So let me pull up the search engine here. What are SVOD rights? Let's see what the AI has to say there. SVOD rights refer to licensing agreements and contracts that allow SVOD, subscription video on demand. Ah, gotcha. That's interesting. Okay, so basically, what this means is that Warner Brothers is actually going to put this thing out on VOD. So it's going to put it on your Movies Anywhere apps, your Google Plays, your the various distributions, the Voodoos out there, right? But Apple is the only streamer that's going to be able to have it under their subscription model. So what's also interesting by that is that means Warner Brothers is going to be both responsible and also receiving cash from any sales made on Apple. Because Apple's VOD, right, because you can buy movies on Apple, right? You don't have to have the subscription service to have that. That's going to go in much ways to Warner Brothers there. So it's interesting that they actually sold everything of their rights except for SVOD. That means the only subscription service that's going to get the movie is Apple. That's a good move by them. And Warner Brothers has been, making some money the past year or so. So, hey, Apple spent a lot of money up front, but it sounds like they're making some of that back on this deal here. So kudos to them. But this also, I think, addresses the question earlier about, okay, if Apple's involved, people might have the assumption of, oh, I'll just wait for this to come on Apple TV. Okay, here's the issue. Apple does not own the rights to this movie. It only has the SVOD rights. It's also a producer on the film. So, because of that, that means that this movie probably won't get onto Apple TV Plus until much later. Probably 3 to 6 months. I think that's a good sign. That's a good thing. Now, if people talk about that a bit more, maybe that'll be enough reason to push people to the theater, because hey, you have to wait a while for this thing to come on Apple TV. Not that people even have Apple TV. If Warner Brothers follows, whatever model it's going to follow as far as when it goes on VOD, no word on that yet. But it sounds like this is a much better situation for the movie going forward. All right, private screening was held in Monaco. Movie had its worldwide premiere June 16th, which again had a lot of very, very good, promising things. Cast and F1 drivers in attendance. European premiere June 23rd. F1 chartered a Qatar Airways flight for the drivers and team principals for Montreal. And so far, it says here, in the United States and Canada, F1 will be released alongside Megan and is projected to gross 35 to 40 million. Okay, so that was according to an early look back June 5th at Deadline. So that would be Tony at Deadline who made that projection. So again, the industry experts are saying 35 to 40 million domestic opening for F1. However, Box Office Pro says 48 to 60. Box Office Theory, 59 to 75. And again, I think this one sounds a bit correct. This is also why do not trust the mainstream media. Do not trust your older, really almost, like, I hate to say it this way, dinosaur age trades these days, especially when it comes to this, because they are using very outdated models for tracking these things. By the very fact that they were saying back June 5th, oh yeah, 35 to 40 million domestic, because what are they doing? They're just looking at pre-sales. They have their own equations for what they have the pre-sales will say. And the studios will also put some numbers out there too, right? But they'll just run with that. They're not actually going to extrapolate any information from that. That's why the pros and the theories are much better when it comes to this, because they take those same ideas, they take those same numbers that are initially out there, and then they say, all right, let's actually think about what realistically this is going to look like. So anyway, things are actually looking a lot better, I would say, for F1. Because, yeah, it still needs to make a ton of money to break even. However, for one, those many production companies means, okay, what is profitable for each one of them could be different. The fact that Warner Brothers has distribution rights, right? So they didn't produce the movie, and I don't remember seeing a production company listed that is a subsidiary of theirs. Let me see again, just to double check. So, see, production companies were Apple, Monolith Pictures, sounds like an independent production company. Plan B sounds like that actually is founded by Brad Pitt. So that's Brad Pitt's production company. Dawn Apollo sounds like an independent one. Jerry Bruckheimer is obviously his own production company too. So Warner Brothers, it doesn't look like they had any production money to spend there, just distribution fees and license. So because it's being split amongst Apple, Monolith, Jerry Bruckheimer, Plan B, Dawn, each of them are putting their own money into that then in different ways. I imagine Apple probably put the bulk of the money in, right? Saying that they spent X amount of money, 130, 140 million, just to get the rights to the movie before anything else was spent. So Apple, again, on the line for quite a bit of money here. And so it's going to have to do pretty well to break even for Apple, I would say. But we don't know exactly how much money was put forward by those other companies. Because, again, Bruckheimer, pretty big producer, lots of cash. Plan B is a pretty big production company too, but that's also Brad Pitt. Interesting that I didn't realize he had founded that in 2001. That's interesting. All right. Anyway, back into the chat. Jay Price at 1025 saying, are you hearing on F1, if it loses money, it is an acceptable loss as they are using the film for propaganda for F1 to reach the U.S. market? It depends, again, because I imagine one of those production companies I was mentioning is one of those F1. Is one of those just a subsidiary of F1, and so they were putting money into it. I know that there's F1 racers in the movie, and I think it was made in conjunction with the league there, so obviously some creative ties. Could be good, though. Yeah. So maybe that's the reason why. Maybe they would see that as a win, even if the film doesn't make money. Here's the thing, though. Based on everything I've just mentioned, I think this film will make a lot more than what is being projected. Kincaid Rumsky, is it just me, or is Warner Brothers starting to kick butt? Yeah, it is something that's interesting, because Warner Brothers was on the down and outs for quite a while. It was struggling a lot at the box office, and it seems more recently, hey, it seems like it's actually doing much better. Obviously, the big win for them this year, and yes, I do own a copy of this because I am a collector after all, but yeah, the Minecraft movie was huge for them. The Steelbook just became available yesterday. So bought this of my own funds, but figured I'd mention it. It's one of those things where it's like, do I want to buy this? Because I really wasn't a fan of the movie. That being said, I'm a collector. Maybe it's one that I'll, like, you know, give away at some point. I don't know. All right. Michael Brigette saying, Only the Brave was one of the first films I saw with MoviePass back in 2017. A very underrated film. Oh, yes. I'm glad that MoviePass is back to its former ways. You know, I'm glad that they kicked, you know, I'm glad that it went under the terrible CEO that they had. I forget his first name, but I know his last name was Lowe. He was awful. So I'm glad that it went under from him. The original creator guy behind it was able to rebuy the rights and relaunch it, and it's a much more sustainable model. So 2017, really solid movie year for movies too, but Only the Brave was so good. I recommend it highly. Michael Brigette saying, in an article Deadline posted for this morning, Warner Brothers chipped in for 50% of the production cost. Apple and Warner Brothers recoup the production and together before Warner Brothers gets distribution fee around 12%. Well, there you go, right there. Thank you, Michael Brigette, for that information about how the split's going to work. So it sounds like it was split production cost 50-50. That's interesting, because Warner Brothers was not listed as a production company. Again, unless one of those production companies was one of their subsidiaries. And then it sounds like from that point on that they will both get 50% of those receipts. So it still has to make a lot of money for them to see any money with that. My regret saying, Tony at Deadline also bumped it to $40 to $50 million in that same article. It's still so on the low end, right? It just shows you how far behind that old metric still is, right? Because again, early June, it was 30 to 40 million. Now, after several weeks, he's bumping it to 40, 50, but you're still having it be 60 to 75 million for Box Office Theory's projections. Father Luca Illick, what's going on, Father Luca? Welcome back. Just stopping by to say hi, y'all. What's going on, Father Luca? Welcome back. Glad that you're here to say hi. Duncan Blackthorn says, hail to you, Duncan. We got Bruce. What's up, Bruce? Welcome back. Physical media for the win. Absolutely. You would never have guessed that I would be a physical media collector, right? There's nothing on screen in front of you behind my back that would indicate that right now. And there's still tons of other films that haven't even gone up there yet. I have a stack back there, and then I got a stack of these right here. Some of these are giveaways. Some of these are films from my collection. So this is one that I did give away on my Discord for members. So Keepers of the Bifrost level and above members get access to a Discord channel, and I have a giveaways channel there where I give away several movies every month. And this was, I think, one of my favorite designs, Shaun of the Dead. Sadly, they're not doing the same design for the rest of the Cornetto trilogy, because it bothers me that they're not, or at least initially they weren't, because they could have done something with the horror brand. They had number 1, so they could have done a number 2. Like, they could have done a lot of things to continue this on with Hot Fuzz, because Hot Fuzz is actually my favorite of the Cornetto trilogy. But really, really good. Mike Regret saying, Lewis Hamilton, one of the top F1 directors, one of the top F1 drivers, is a producer of the film. He is the one with Dawn Apollo Films. Ah, I gotcha. Yeah, that's right, because there are a lot of individual producers on the movie, right? So some of them have their production companies involved. Sometimes they will also just be their own, production company, as it were. Geek Truth 54, what's going on, brother? Saying, good morning, Odin. What's going on, Geek Truth? Welcome back. When's your next video go live, Geek Truth? When's the July physical media breakdown go live? I will look forward to it. And then we got DeBeast808 saying, aloha and blessings. Blessings to you, DeBeast. Welcome back. All right, we still got about 10 minutes, so let's go to the next bit of information, which will be some reviews. So some relatively quick reviews, because if you want more information, obviously, I post all written reviews of films that I watch now on Critic List, since I don't really have a lot of time, even over the summer, to record individual review videos. Also, algorithmically, it's for some reason really bad. So people love to watch the box office because that's kind of what I'm known for. And then if I ever try to put video reviews out there for movies, it's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, there goes that. So saving them for streams is much better, so that way they're still on the channel. You can still access them and get those, but also written form over on criticlist.com, a phenomenal site for information there. So the first film I want to review is, I want to start at a positive, all right? And so the first thing I'm going to do is review the film The Life of Chuck. So this I only found out about from one of you, right? I forget who it was, but someone on stream one night said, hey, have you seen Life of Chuck? Do you know anything about this movie? Like, it's really, really good. You check it out. And I hadn't heard of it really up until that point. So I finally was able to go and watch this movie. And, oh man, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So this is a Michael Flanagan movie. Michael Flanagan, mostly known for horror films, so The Haunting on Hill House. He did Midnight Mass. So those are some of the shows that he's done. He was involved with Hard Eyes. Dr. Sleep is probably what he's very well known for. Ouija he did, which again, not a fan of that concept in general being in a film. Also Oculus as well. So Gerald's Game was a very good thriller, a very underrated thriller, I would say. And he's done a bunch of other things too. But those are kind of the things that I recognize from him, and especially when it comes to Dr. Sleep, I thought that he has a lot of really good ideas on these things. Now, when it comes to this movie, it is a drama fantasy. I would actually argue that it's like a dark comedy as well, maybe even just a straight up comedy at certain points, right? There was a lot of moments in this movie that I was laughing, and I just wasn't expecting to. I was not expecting to go into this film laughing as much as I ended up laughing for this movie. So as you can see, I gave it a 75% rad score. And the reason why it doesn't quite reach the most excellent for me is for a couple of different reasons. So first, let me pull up my review. As it said in my review, I had no idea what this film was about and only heard about it after a subscriber had recommended it, and I'm happy that they did. Not only does the cast knock it out of the park, especially a surprisingly good performance from Mark Hamill. Yeah, Mark Hamill's in this, and he actually gives a good performance. That's a very rare feat for Mark Hamill these days. But the writing as well keep the story moving forward with many fun moments and a lot of thought-provoking sequences. Though the story and how it is told may be disjointed for some and could have actually done more with the three very different segments of the movie, Flanagan does just enough to make this a film I plan to watch again in the very near future. I think my wife actually will enjoy this because it has those fantasy elements to it. But basically the story is told in reverse. So it's a story of 3 acts. You start with Act 3, move to Act 2, Act 1. And so some people may like that, some people may not. But what I like about it is that what is set up in Act 3 leaves so many questions. So many things you're like, whoa, I have no idea what's going on. And then all of a sudden in Acts 2 and 3, those things start to be revealed. And I love how that happened. I loved being able to tie the pieces between all 3 acts together, because you can do that as the film goes on. And I would say it's a movie well worth checking out and watching. Now, getting to the criticisms I have about why it didn't quite make it to a most excellent score for me. So first, there is some political bias in the movie. I put slightly left here. Luckily, the comments are pretty mundane, meaning they're said and then they're gone. They're not really spending a lot of time on these. It's not trying to really push any agenda, which is really nice. But the comments are still there, and so I wanted to make sure to mention them. So first, there's comments about global warming, right? So basically, there's this almost post-apocalyptic or apocalyptic type event going on in the very beginning. And so it's, people are trying to find ways to describe it. And so it's in that context of, oh, people thought it was this or thought it was that. So global warming is mentioned in that. You do also, though, have one comment made early on, and it uses the exact expression right-wing nut jobs. So, again, probably not the kind of thing you want to have in your movie, especially the way that it is. Now, again, I wasn't bothered by it as much because it says it in context of even they who hold to these views, right, couldn't ignore some of the signs, but then goes on to say that, oh, even the people that thought the signs were global warming were wrong. So it's basically saying that comment there within the context of it really isn't anything to do with that or them at all. So it's said, though. I had to put it out there. Again, as I say, thankfully more of a throwaway line than anything else. So again, I wish it wasn't in there. Wish they had found another way to try to make a similar comment, but really just unnecessary. And then the other thing, too, is that there is a mention in the very beginning because towards the very beginning, the internet goes out. And there's some really clever things they do with that about, like, what would you do if the internet, disappeared or didn't work as reliably. And in that, they try to make jokes about Pornhub. So it's mentioned. It's not mentioned critically. So anytime that something like that is mentioned in either a neutral or even a positive way, I'm going to criticize that because, as we all know, again, very devout Catholic here, very, very, not ashamed of my beliefs, but also of the fact that many of them are rooted in natural law, and it is a grave violation of natural law in the using of people as objects. And so anything that's going to try to diminish the severity of that or make a joke out of it, it's like, I got to call that out. But again, other than that, it's very, very good. So that's why, again, gave it 75%. Those two things really really did, push down my own personal enjoyment of the film. And then ending on a not a positive note, but more of on a negative note, I also watched Elio. All right, I actually got to watch Elio. And so surprisingly, it's not as bad as people are saying that it is. Again, I'm not saying that it's a good film. I gave it a 40%. It's right on the borderline between bogus and decent for me. But ultimately, as I say here, though the film is getting a bit more hate than it should, what is clear is that the story has all the potential in the world and then squanders it for an uninspired and derivative story with forgettable characters not worth the time. And that still holds to that, right? The characters, I don't know any of their names. I don't know any of their names other than Elio, and I don't really care what their names are. The designs are uninspired. The general concept itself also. There's a lot of interesting ideas about, aliens' existence and about how to reach them. But also, it's hard, and people have been mentioning this point, it's a very good one, I think, that Elio starts off actually as the bad guy because he steals someone's ham radio. Like, he's not a good guy. And in fact, he's an annoying kid. Again, I think the point was that, he starts off here and then ends in a much better place. But it's like, that journey isn't rewarding, though. You don't really feel like Elio really deserves or earns that journey of like that redemption arc. And so that's why for me it's decent, because the animation, I think, is not as bad as people have said it is. And also there are some good elements in there about family and, the importance of family and the importance of everything else. Now, again, even though I don't think it's as bad as people are saying it is still not good either. And also, it's still looking really bad for them going forward because, as you can see over at Deadline, Elio misfire could hasten demise of original animation, Wall Street analyst says, but don't blame film execs, blame the audience. And here is the biggest problem of all. Now, of course, this is the headline for what the Wall Street executive is saying. That being said, it is the execs' fault. They're the ones who have chosen to be political. They are the ones who have chosen to push their companies in the identity politics direction, and they have poisoned the waters so that when films come out that don't push those agendas, and I don't think that Elio does that, it's going to be affected by it. Because people are going to look at this film and say, hey, first off, this doesn't look like an inspiring story, for one, and it's not. And two, why would I trust this company that has perpetually pushed forward garbage in previous years, especially over the last several years? Again, that's not the audience's fault. Dade / executive. Again, he's just reporting on it here. He says the stumble out of the gate for Elio, which had the worst box office opening of any Pixar film ever at just $21 million. Again, you have to adjust for inflation, but it's still really, really bad. Highlights a concerning trend in the view of a Wall Street analyst. Goes on, despite a Rotten Tomatoes score of 84%, which it placed in the top 30% of all reviewed films annually. Again, because this goes to show you, Rotten Tomatoes does not mean a dang thing to anybody anymore. So Doug Kreutz, who covers the media sector of TD Crown, says the gap between original animation and sequels derivative has grown enormously wide since COVID. So it sounds like Kreutz is the one who's blaming the audience. It is not the audience's fault. Please stop blaming the audience. This is what's gotten you in trouble also in the first place. By blaming the audience for things that are your fault. You poisoned the well. You've made the bad movies. You've been uninspired. That's why people aren't seeing your original movies. It's hard to even call them original because even if it's a, quote, original idea, it's still so derivative of other things and other projects that have done it better, it's hardly fitting of that. The fact that now it's gotten into not only Walt Disney Animation, but also into Pixar, this shows you how bad the rot at Disney is. Because when you decide to go political, and shout out to Film Threat, shout out to Alan Ng and the D-Files, right? His whole expose on Disney was huge because it explains why these films suck. Because they decided to go in and be activists, so they fired all of the male animators and people involved who had been there for decades, who had been there for like a decade or more, and then said, oh, well, you're a white male, and so we need more diversity, and so we're going to push you out. You also pushed out the most senior persons, meaning the most skilled, the people who had the most knowledge, the people that had years and years of experience. You pushed that out just to make room for a more, quote, diverse workplace. Well, guess what? You also lost your skills. You also lost the people that were making these amazing movies. And so now what do we get? Now we get these second, third-rate films, and it's no surprise at all. So yeah, please spare me. D-Files especially exposed this, but Exec Croots, please, you know, spare us the nonsense about this being the audience's fault. This is clearly the executive's fault. This is clearly Disney's fault. And until Disney can get rid of these activists, maybe rehire the people that they have let go, and maybe have skill be your priority and not diversity, maybe then you'll return to glory. But anyway, we'll go to the last comments here and wrap things up because Geeks and Gamers Daily is starting just about now, so make sure to check that out after the stream is over. My Baguette, though, at 10:53 says, yeah, I really enjoyed Life of Chuck. So good, dude. I'm glad you got to see it because it's a film you really need to see and think through without being spoiled. Agreed. Yeah, don't look into spoilers. I try to keep it as spoiler-free as I could. Again, I wanted to mention those other things as just for warnings because I do think that they needed to be mentioned, and they don't really spoil much of plot, if anything. So, again, Michael Baguette, thank you. I think you may have been the one that recommended. So, yeah. Life of Chuck is great. Geek264 saying, my next video is Tuesday. It will be the July breakdown. Some good steelbooks next month. Ace Ventura 4K, Small Soldiers 4K, and Earthquake 4K. All are first time 4K. Thanks for watching. Absolute Geek Truth. Thank you for that early explanation. But yeah, stay tuned for next Tuesday for that video. Subscribe to Geek264. And then my Baguette 756 saying, I thought Act 3, the first part, was the weaker part of the film, but Act 2 and Act 1 were phenomenal. See, and I would actually disagree. I actually loved Act 3 because of the mystery, right? They set up this mysterious thing, and then it gets explained later on in 2 and 1. 2 is just fun. Like, Act 2 is a lot of fun, and then Act 1 is, I think, just a solid bit of storytelling. The storytelling in the movie is really, really good. The only criticism I have of it is I actually wish they had spent more time. I wanted more time in the Act 3 part. I actually wanted more time there because there was so much intrigue. There were so many things I didn't know. The characters established are ones I wanted to know more about. And again, Acts 2 and 1 kind of helped to, you know, I guess you could say resolve some of those things. But I love the actors that played them. And so it's like, that's why I wanted to spend a little bit more time with them. But anyway, thank y'all very much for watching, everybody. For those that were in the chat, appreciate it as always. And just a reminder, no live stream for me really for the next week or so. So I won't be on FNT this week because I'll be traveling. Won't be on Salty Saturday because I'll be in St. Louis with family. No Monday evening stream next week. No Wednesday morning stream next week. And so the next time I will be on is FNT next Friday, unless travel issues happen, because we'll be getting back on Friday. But I'm going to plan to leave at a time that we can get back before FNT. So that'll be the next time. And then if not then at least that Saturday for the Salty Saturday stream. So thank you all very much for watching. I'll put that reminder up on social media at some point over the next couple of days as well. And I appreciate y'all very much for watching. Please make sure to smash the like button, light up the fire button over on Odyssey, smash the rumble button as well. Make sure to hit the hearts over on X if you're watching there too. And again, hopefully any comments that were left there have gone through. If no comments were there, that's fine as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thanks, Odin. Enjoy your family trip. Morak, thank you. Appreciate that. Remain blessed, everyone. You too, DeBeast. And fun with collecting. Thanks for being here also. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Blessed, blessed Wednesday. And I'll see y'all in a little over a week. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illich and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. Also a huge shout out to my newest YouTube member, Raichu. And lastly, to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy, shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.